Welcome back, folks, and we are joined now by the Libertarian Party presidential candidate. This is Robert Jackson. Robert, how are you?
Well, I'm doing just fine, Dennis. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning.
Well, you know, I have a minor streak of libertarian in me, but I'm adverse to belong to any sort of party.
Good.
That's the real That's the
right.
objectivist in me prohibits me from being full-board libertarian. Tell us a little bit about your platform. I guess we're talking essentially about sort of minimally regulated markets, right? Strong civil liberties. Is it the same usual suspects?
Well, the usual libertarian principles that I think the government is entirely too large and it's outside of the province of the Constitution. And I do believe that we need a smaller, more efficient government and getting the responsibilities of government more back toward individual citizens, and that we need to expand on the personal liberties and responsibilities of individuals. This is what's made the United States the greatest country in the world, and I think it's the foundation that we can go forward as a more aggressive and a better, more productive country.
Is Ron Paul completely coincidental or just a kindred spirit? What's your take on Ron?
Well, he has a lot of kindred spirit. He has a lot of good issues, but I think in most cases he's a little more negative, and I'm on a position of saying that if we put the libertarian principles across the board as a governance, that we can in fact make a higher standard of living and more enjoyment for all of the citizens, again, through personal liberties and responsibilities and rule of law.
Would isolationism work in a world nowadays? I know Pat Buchanan probably believes it could. Maybe you do. I don't. Do you?
Well, I don't think isolation is going to work in this world. However, the Constitution is very clear is that the main item, I think, in contention is defense of the country. Yes, the prime objective of the United States is to protect itself. And in that respect, I think we should concentrate on what is really required to protect ourselves and not be involved with protecting and policing the rest of the world. That said, I think we need free trade, open trade throughout the world. I have dealt trade Australia, China, India. I do it the right way. It's my products. I sell them. I buy them overseas. I've done that. We need to be part of the world organization, but we don't need to dominate the different countries. But we are the strongest, most responsible country, and that's a good thing. I think we should stay that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now tell me about your campaign up to this point. I know the general election cycle started like embarrassingly early almost this time around. How have you gone more Fred Thompson, or were you in early too, or where do you stand in your campaign right now?
Well, I've been developing a campaign now for about 4 or 5 months, but I'm somewhat a believer like yourself. I mean, what in the world are we doing 2 years ahead of the election trying to do this? I'm not in the same boat as both Democrats and Republicans. What my position is and what my plan is I want to get my positions on how to govern the country out in front of the public next summer, late summer, early fall, so that people can take a rational look at what's available. I think the Democrats and Republicans are a single party right now, and they're only arguing about which one of them will have the individuals in power. They are selling the country. I mean, if you're going to spend $500 million on your campaign, yeah, it's going to take a couple of years. But when you're done, you have sold all of the appointments and and all the things needed to have a good government. They won't have the opportunity to do what they want to do as president. It will already have been decided by the time of the election. That's wrong.
When I watched Howard Dean run, I always thought part of the equation for him was that he had no chance to win. And indeed, when they told him he might win, he almost flamed out like Gary Hart telling him to follow me around. I mean, Dean went so nuts that nobody could elect him. And I often wonder I find it intriguing when guys make an attack on the fortress president when they really, at this point, probably you don't have much of a chance. I'm not being mean, Bob. I'm just trying to be a pragmatist. What if you had a chance? Would you be up to this task? Would you want this job?
Well, first of all, I got a better chance of being president winning the lottery. And, everybody thinks that's a great idea. But I think if you would look, I know you have, but if other people would look at my web page, bobjackson.org, And you'll see that I have a rather extensive and unique background. And in my opinion, if any individual citizen could rise and be a credible candidate, they'd have to have credentials similar to mine. And I do think that the Founding Fathers and this country has always been built on people that are related to real life, living the dream of the American promise, and becoming a president and part of the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the background is there. I also think the opportunity is there. For the first time in many, many years, there's no heir apparent. There is nobody that's got a crown that's saying, I'm going to be the president.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, for good reason, a disdain for both the presidency and Congress. I think the rational people of the United States are thinking, this country's gone the wrong direction.
No, I think they're thinking it's gone insane. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, well, if the people really think it's insane, they're going to look for a sane alternative. And I think I can provide that sane alternative. And I have advantages to be president that no other candidate has. I don't have the burden of being kissing up to, as you might say, half of Congress because they're of my party, of which I owe them debts. I don't have to recognize the leadership of either the Democrat or Republican Party. And let's face it, Dennis, they've been there drinking Potomac water for 25 years.
You aren't kidding. It's easy to kiss up to half of Congress now because they're such a half-assed organization. Listen, what do you do, though, with Iraq? You get this plunked in your lap. What are you going to do? Now, I want a guy in there. I'll be honest with you. I've aligned with Giuliani already because I think radical Islam is the radical factions of it are as dangerous as any group I've ever seen in my lifetime. What are you going to do? You're just going to come back here and hope they don't come, or what's your feeling, Bob? Give me an adult answer here.
Well, I think, as you've pointed out before, second guessers always have it right. And as president, I'm going to be first guesser. But the situation now is I'm not the president, and I won't be the president until January of '09. So there's going to be changes between now and then. At that time, if there is still a military presence in Iraq, it's going to be too long to do something or whatever, and we should, in fact, get out of there. We're not winning there at that point, but in the meantime, we should support our troops. I mean, they're over there doing the best they can do. But the real enemy,
they're doing great,
is not a country. It's an ideology that is spread throughout the world. And we are at war. It's not like, let's get out of Iraq, pull everybody back, because we're not at war. We are at war, and I don't think the Congress or the presidency understands how to pursue that war.
Well, listen, is one of the things that you would want out of this war for our side is to no longer be invaded on domestic soil?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, why doesn't anybody concede then that it's been over 6 years now? If George Bush leaves office and there's not been another attack here, will anybody give him kudos that he deserves? Would you?
Well, I would, because, it's one of those things like it's really great that we haven't had any, and for somebody to stand up and say, take credit for it. But I think what's fogging it is this power struggle we have, excuse me, for personal power among the candidates that are looking for either Democrat or Republican presidency. So they're not able to just sit back and say, let's look at realistically what's happening and what we need to do and form a policy. The Constitution is very clear. We are at war. The declaration of war is to be made at Congress. And Congress at this point needs to address that situation. And as president, I'm going to lean very hard on Congress and say, we are at war. Make the case. Reach past the leadership. As an independent libertarian, I don't have to obey either the dogma of the Democrat Republicans, which is the same, larger government, all that stuff. I can go past leadership and say, look, it takes 2/3 of Congress to pass a bill. Now, let's get back to the newer elected and those people that still understand what life's all about and create a declaration of war and, as the Constitution says, a policy on how to execute that war. As president, I would then work with Congress and execute that war.
Let me jump in here, Bob. Let me jump in
because war we've ever been in.
Let me jump in here because I got 30 seconds. I will tell you this, and our founding fathers are always brought up. In some ways, I don't like it when they're brought up because I think they're used in a counterproductive way. But I will say this, the little I know about our founding fathers, and I read a lot about history, so it's a little I say facetiously, I don't think they would have tolerated any of this crap. Our founding fathers were blowing people's heads off because they put a tax on their breakfast beverage. And it wasn't even coffee. Can you imagine how insane these guys would have been on a 4-shot espresso? Yeah, our founding fathers would not have Aquademijad speaking today at Columbia University. That's the way I see it. Thanks. That's BobJackson.org, presidential candidate Dennis Miller here.
The Dennis Miller Show.